The phone that Samsung has teased multiple times by now is finally official, and I actually got to hold it in my hands recently. While it is indeed always impressive to see a phone push the limits of what we expect, I definitely have some thoughts on what could be quite the edgy product. So let's talk about some concerns when it comes to Samsung's latest mid-cycle release in the Galaxy S25 lineup. It's Joshua Vergara. What's going on, everybody? These are my top 5 concerns with the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra. Now, one thing I want to put out there before I get started, while these are framed as concerns, I will also let you know some details that Samsung themselves shared that might mitigate some of the potential issues. It would seem that Samsung already had some of these things in mind, which is great to see, so we're really just exploring the possibilities of this new super thin smartphone. Besides, I'm going to have the chance to test all of my concerns really soon, as the phone is up for pre-order now. If you are as intrigued as many people seem to be by this new release, you can check out the links in the description and in the pinned comment below to check out the phone for yourself. Doing so really helps out my channel, so thank you for that. Regardless, to see more about the Galaxy S25 Edge and more, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Okay, this probably won't be too surprising a concern, but when a piece of tech is as thin as this Galaxy S25 Edge seems to be, you might find yourself being a little extra careful with it. The phone is particularly thin at just 5.8mm in the chassis, though the camera area does add just a smidge more in the thickness up in the back corner. But while thin might be in, the aspect that captured me about this phone is actually the weight. 163 grams in a slab that is this tall and wide means that the weight distribution is pretty spread out, making for a phone that actually does feel a bit like a feather. I found myself twirling the phone around in my hands, and I entertained the idea of tossing the phone the way that I would most daily drivers. For example, plopping the phone on the couch before I plop on it myself. And all of this was actually in full view of the Samsung product leads, who reassured us multiple times during that briefing that the phone can take plenty of that kind of punishment. Now, I don't really know how far I would go with pushing those limits, but I'm sure there are going to be at least some fellow YouTubers that will try some bend tests with a super slim smartphone like this. All of that said, the durability specs of the Galaxy S25 Edge are worth knowing. The phone does still have a IP68 rating for water and dust resistance, and the phone did feel like a solid slab of titanium despite its lightness. There's a new form of Gorilla Glass, it's called Gorilla Glass Ceramic 2, that protects the typical vivid Samsung AMOLED display. Itself a flat panel, which likely helps with the durability a bit as well. So no, this isn't going to be an edge device like we kind of remember from years back, as curved displays like we used to see are being left in the past. I don't quite think there will be any issues with the phone's ability to withstand regular daily use, but as someone who is usually a bit overly aware of my possessions, I probably will be extra mindful not to put this phone in like my jeans back pocket before sitting down, or I'll make sure not to keep this super slim phone in the front pocket of my joggers for fear of it simply slipping out when I am just sitting down. By squishing the phone down to the slim profile, there are obviously going to be some key compromises, and that leads to most of these potential concerns. First and foremost, and for a creative like me, the cameras. While I will admit to wanting more minimal smartphones in my pockets these days, it does still matter to me that the cameras on a phone that I do decide to carry around are still up to snuff. Now, Samsung probably is going to achieve some good image quality still with the 200 megapixel main camera and the software processing that they're known for, as well as providing some good motion capture with the same tools that were introduced in the mainline Galaxy S25 phones like this Ultra right here, with tools like the audio eraser. But that being said, the Edge is the only phone in the S25 lineup that does not come with 3 lenses on the rear because they've done away with that telephoto. And while I do understand the compromise that was needed here, the dependency on digital zoom in that 200 megapixel main camera might not always yield satisfaction. It might just be a bit of a consolation prize. The 12 megapixel ultra wide, on the other hand, feels like the bare minimum for a phone that is meant to be considered a premium offering. We will see what the cameras bring to the table in future content, both here on my channel via real-world camera tests and also on my social media, so make sure you're following me across all of the networks. Now, this one might seem a bit obvious, as batteries just have to be smaller to achieve a thinner smartphone. And indeed, we're not cracking the 4000 mAh mark with the Galaxy S25 Edge, which might make some of you at least raise an eyebrow at the prospect of less than all-day battery life under heavy workflows. Now, both the processor and the Samsung software will of course do their best to make sure that the battery does last as long as technically possible, but raw capacity is still something that most people consider. Not to mention, Samsung is sticking to the more conventional 25-watt charging that puts it more in line with the baseline Galaxy S25 rather than the Plus or Ultra models. That said, the Edge does hit some ultra highs with the processing package thanks to the Snapdragon 8 Elite in here. That's great, and it does make this a desirable phone for those who just want great performance without worrying about some of the extras, the cameras included. I will fully acknowledge that plenty of people in my audience, those of you in my comments, say that you don't need smartphones to also be full-on point-and-shoot cameras, and if your daily media consumption and productivity can come in a super sleek package, well, then the Edge might be a great option. But with all of that said, I'm also diving further into games, both in the Play Store and emulated recently, and that means sustained high performance is desirable. There is a vapor chamber in the Edge, one that is obviously thinner and I guess broader, and that makes sense, but we'll see how well it actually works to sustain performance throughout certain tasks like photo editing, video editing, and gaming sessions in games like Genshin Impact or GTA Vice City. Okay, so I guess if you look at the spec sheets and hear some of the details so far, it seems like the Galaxy S25 Edge is simply a very thin phone and there isn't too much else that's different. I would say that's mostly right, depending on how you feel about some of the obvious compromises that were made to make this thinness a reality. I will admit to feeling quite good about the design and the general feel of the phone though, which still provides largely the same core experience as any other flagship Galaxy phone. I did ask during the briefing what Samsung kind of expects from people who already bought into the Galaxy S25 lineup, especially the Ultra, and are now looking at this novel update that is appearing mid-cycle. There might be some people that are intrigued enough to make the switch, but the point does still stand that people coming from, let's say, 2 or even more generations back of the Galaxy lineup have a genuinely interesting new option to choose from now. It just remains those people's opinion whether or not super slim is the feature that they want to buy into over all of the other capabilities that thicker phones are able to provide. But you know what, it did get me thinking, and this is a little bit of a bonus that I'm bringing here. Samsung does call this phone an innovation device, which is another way of saying the term proof of concept. It remains to be seen if an Edge phone is something we can expect with each year's mainline releases, but if we were able to look at the 5.8mm that this phone comes in as a proof of concept, it kind of begs the question, what if Samsung simply doubled up on that? And I mean, think of an impressively slim design and then take another one of those phones and put it right on top. I think you know where I'm going with this notion, and perhaps Samsung's foray into this space-saving minimalism will unfold into some new possibilities in the near future. That's just a thought. And so, there you have it. More than just a look into the new Samsung Galaxy S25 Edge, I wanted to give some of my high-level thoughts on the various things we could consider in this new frontier Samsung is exploring, as well as perhaps a vision of the future thanks to what they see as an innovation for premium smartphones. Now, I want to know if you have any concerns regarding the new Galaxy S25 Edge, and allow me to remind you that if you are interested in trying one for yourself, you can get one using the links in the description and in the pinned comment below. Again, look forward to more content about this phone once I get my hands on a review unit. But from there though, I'm going to go ahead and call it on this one. Thank you so much for hanging out with me again today, as plenty of content about the Galaxy S25 Edge is coming out now. Please take care of yourselves and each other, and enjoy your tea, everybody.